Welcome back. It's time for another real-life nature talk. Today is where you will learn things I will attempt to teach you. I never know exactly where these are going to go, but I try my best anyways and attempt to keep it light on tangents. It's the only skill that I gained from over a decade of cable television and the United States education system. This is not a visually intensive video. You can toss the phone in your cup holder, throw this up on the low-quality alternate monitor, won't affect your experience in the slightest. Today's feature will be animals that probably shouldn't exist. I'll explain that further because it sounds mean, which it is, but it's also true. When I say that an animal shouldn't exist, I mean it does a terrible job at existing. That may range from a lack of instinct to genetic deficiencies, failure to acclimate to its surroundings, and built-in self-destruct mechanisms. This may seem vague, but trust me, it's going to make sense rather quickly, particularly with who's coming first. Koalas should not be a real thing. Put down your pitchforks and listen. Just because something is cute when you see a picture of it on the internet does not mean that it is fit to exist, a sentiment you will hear repeated today. Koalas exist out of pure luck and coincidence. So do a lot of things in the Australia-New Zealand area. Here's why. When all the continents separated about 200 million years ago, Australia, and by extension New Zealand, got a weird deal regarding predatory animals. That weird deal was that they received very few, and the land-based predators they did get all fucking died. This is why the land-based wildlife in both countries was able to develop in such a strange and unique way. There was nothing killing them for evolving terrible traits. That was until the dingo, domestic cats, and dogs were introduced a few thousand years ago, but it takes much longer than that for evolution to kick in, so nothing has changed in that department. I say that so I may say this. The koala has quite possibly the worst survival instincts displayed by any animal on Earth. First, their food source, eucalyptus. If you do not know, this plant is literally poison. This is the only sustenance that koalas will consume, and it's nearly impossible for them to digest. Eucalyptus, in addition to being a non-digestible poison, is essentially worthless in terms of nutritional value. This means koalas are tired. So tired they spend up to 20 hours a day sleeping. In the time a koala is awake, it will screech, fall out of trees, or do the same thing P. Diddy is currently pending charges on. In that process, they will more than likely spread or gain chlamydia from the victim koala. This is because koalas maintain a 20% to 90% likelihood of having chlamydia depending on where you find them. Two final notes. Koalas are so painfully unfit for existence, they cannot recognize eucalyptus if it is not currently on a branch. You may present them with only the leaves, and they will proceed to starve to death. Koalas have also not evolved durable enough teeth to contend with this vegetation, so when their teeth get dull, and they will get dull, the koala once again starves to death. These are only about half of the things koalas are terrible at, but we have other animals to speak about, so maybe they get a mention later. Pandas are also unfit to live, and I've no idea how they've lasted this long. Well, I do, it's mostly human intervention. The biggest limiting factor on the population of pandas, apart from deforestation and human encroachment granted, are the pandas. They literally don't know how to make more of themselves. Pandas ovulate once a year for about 3 days. That's not a great window. If you're unaware of what that means, ovulation is basically the time that mammals can make babies. In addition, they don't get practice bumping uglies because they're solitary animals, so most of them don't know what to do when the time comes. Not to mention they usually have twins and let one die because they can't manage two. Casey Anthony is a better parent than a panda because at least she was present for the murder of her children. All of this is exacerbated by pandas' dietary requirements. Pandas only eat one thing, bamboo, and they spend nearly every waking hour of every day doing so. Similarly to our last subject, this is because they've evolved to eat one incredibly nutrient-deficient piece of vegetation. So they eat for about 12 to 14 hours a day, and they sleep for about 8 to 12, but they spend all 24 neglecting their offspring. Moral of the story, terrible things happen when the only thing you eat is dino nuggies. Back to Australia, wallabies and kangaroos, all eyes are on you, or they would be if getting stressed wasn't a death sentence for you. Once again, we arrive at another consequence born of a predator's absence. Allow me to introduce you to an affliction known as stress myopathy or capture myopathy. The human equivalent would be something like rhabdomyolysis, and let's take a moment to explain because it can actually save a life. Rhabdomyolysis occurs when muscle tissues break down, enter the bloodstream, and interfere with your kidneys. It requires immediate medical attention. It occurs as the result of incredibly intense physical exertion. Quick example, if you have never been to the gym before and you immediately start running your engines at 110% of your effort, you are at risk for rhabdomyolysis. It's even possible if you are in good shape. All you need is muscles, blood, kidneys, and overexertion. Pretty sure most of us have that. Symptoms will include intense fatigue, muscle pains, and very dark urine. This is why it's incredibly important to ease into and prepare for intense exercise. Back to the topic at hand, stress or capture myopathy is incredibly similar to what I just explained, only it affects animals. A kangaroo or a wallaby will undergo an intense and stressful altercation, they soon go into shock, and they die soon after. This was fine with no natural predators, but as I mentioned, there are now feral dogs, cats, and dingoes populating Australia. Pretty sure that's not what you want to see as an animal whose stress response is fucking dying. To make matters worse, this can also be compounded with high temperatures. Just a reminder, Australia remains to be the hottest country in the world. As far as I'm aware, stress myopathy or capture myopathy has a near 100% fatality rate, likely on account of kangaroos being unable to call an ambulance. On the bright side, they do seem to catch it less as they mature, so they aren't a total lost cause. You've heard me harp on this before if you've watched the other videos, but pugs piss me off. Well, it's not the pugs that do it, they're actually the victims in this scenario. It's the people who own them and continue to the cycle of abuse that is their breeding. The exception, of course, being anyone who takes in a rescue. That's a completely different scenario. You cannot argue a purpose for the breeding of pugs beyond that of their owner's vanity, because there isn't one. They don't occur naturally, and they surely aren't bred for any working purposes. You could say companionship, but that's not a valid reason to selectively breed an abomination in the eyes of nature. I don't say abomination because I think they're ugly or this or that. I say it because they are predisposed to a ridiculous array of disabilities and disfigurement. It's not a matter of if they will be in immense pain, it's just a matter of when. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Let this be a message to anyone buying pugs from breeders. You may not be a bad person, but you are selfish and you are short-sighted. I wish you had spent more time thinking about the ramifications others face because of your choices. On a less disappointing note, Babirusas are... well, they're kind of fucked up, honestly. I don't have compassion for anything swine-related. I'm not a religious person, I just think pigs and their adjacent cousins are both mean and ugly. Now granted, they're good at surviving, very intelligent and capable trash compactors. However, not this one. I feel bad for this one. Why is that? Well, it's because the Babirusa has a built-in self-destruct button. Specifically, it's got horns that loop back into its skull and lobotomize itself as they grow. That is, if lobotomies were just getting stabbed directly in the front of your brain. The Babirusa could assemble a fully functional Tomahawk missile, and I would still think that it's a fucking idiot. How do you develop into this? How, in any version of nature, is a purely detrimental attempt at trephination an ideal trait to cultivate? Some animals like this one just got plain screwed on their deal with evolution. Last one for today, and you may be surprised by this. It's actually humans. Sure, we created comprehensive medicine and learning institutions, but we also created insurance companies and require the concept of mutually assured destruction to behave ourselves, so I'm considering contributions as a net neutral and just checking out physiology here. From vestigial organs to soft bodies to free will, we are actually designed pretty abysmally. Our success is attributable to our brains and hands capable of fine motor function. Get a normal person and have them raw dog the wilderness with no tools. They will find their place in the food chain by the end of the week, and that position is not near the top. No other animal has both the capability to reason and the willingness to completely ignore said reason. We have bones that exist just to break. Wisdom teeth. Honestly, I don't know why I didn't start with wisdom teeth. Wisdom teeth is a strong enough argument for why we suck at evolving on a physiological level. Our jaws downsized, and somehow the dental hardware next door didn't get the memo to fire some associates. The female body, that thing is great. Love that. My favorite part of human evolution. Top 3 favorite things in the history of ever. But as a species in general, our bodies desperately need a hardware update. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we will finish for today. For the record, in case you are wondering, I only hate parasitic animals, so if you feel like you've detected some vitriol toward anything besides pug owners, you are mistaken. It's just difficult to articulate the concept of this thing is very bad at not dying in a pleasant manner. Hopefully, you learned something about why koalas are the worst or why you shouldn't chase young kangaroos. On an unrelated note, feel free to join the gaming Discord linked in the description if you are old enough. There's Monster Hunter, Warhammer, Helldivers, Marvel Rivals. We play all sorts of stuff in there. Thanks for hanging around. Have a good one.